Hey, everybody, this is Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News. And I'm very pleased to have with us today Clinton Fitch of Ooma. Clinton, thank you for joining us today.
You bet, Doug. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm really delighted we're able to talk about this very important topic. We're in the midst of the copper sunset,
Mhm.
so this is huge. I want to point out to a lot of readers, and especially the channel, especially the enterprise, it may impact you in ways that are not visible to you. So,
Thanks.
Clinton, what's up? What's happening with our wire lines in 2024?
So the FCC back in August of 2022 actually put out a an order saying that the incumbent carriers, the ones who own those copper networks, don't have to maintain them, and they also pulled the handcuffs off from a pricing perspective. And so the challenge is that for years, companies like Ooma, for example, in the UCaaS space, we've been replacing the easy to replace copper lines, those that are on desk phones and for fax machines and those kind of things. But the real challenge are the ones that are left, which are a lot more human impacting. So things like elevator phones, for example, or fire alarm or security panels or door entry systems. These lines tend to be a little bit more difficult to replace, and so they haven't really been sought after from a replacement perspective. The challenge is that second part that I mentioned. The FCC has told the carriers that own these networks, hey, look, you can charge whatever you want at this point. So we're seeing price increases, real bills from real customers. We're seeing 3, 4, 500% increases month over month. And there's no regulation on that. So we can continue to increase at 2, 3, 4, 500% a month. And until that's replaced with a lower cost option that's just as effective, you're going to continue to see that bill increase. So those are the real challenges. It's these difficult lines that are left, and then they're just incrementing at a pretty high rate of knots on the price.
So they've stripped away the pricing protection, which everyone sort of took for granted. But are there other regulatory moves underway too?
Well, there's one of the challenges with any POTS replacement solution out there is that they have to meet a certain level of requirements in order to be life safety systems certified, essentially. So with POTS, you didn't really have to worry about it, although those regulations were there. But with digitized solutions, voice over IP, that kind of stuff, which is what we do with our product, Uma AirDial, the regulatory pieces and the certifications around that solution become critically important. So things like NFPA 72 and ASME A17, those types of things, UL 864, all of these have to do with different types of regulations in the industry. So for life safety systems, for example, if you're going to have a phone in an elevator, in order for that call has to happen, right? If somebody's stuck in an elevator, you don't want that call to fail, right? So there's requirements that we as a vendor, as a solution provider, have to meet on our device and on our platform to be able to meet those regulations and requirements.
So, are there options? Because, there's only one place to buy that pot service. Now my price protections are gone, but you're telling me that the safety regulations are still in place.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah, for sure. And there are a lot of different POTS replacement solutions that are out there. We have what we call Uma AirDial. That is our all-in-one solution that is designed to replace these copper lines. And for us, it was really critical from day one that we designed it with those regulatory pieces in mind. We wanted to make sure that we met all of those out of the gate and weren't trying to backfill to make that happen. So we have all of those certifications because of the way that we designed the box. It doesn't have any moving parts, for example. It has a backup battery, so if you lose power, you can still make phone calls. We have dual connectivity either through Ethernet or through LTE providers and so forth. So we have a lot of those things we kept in mind from day one. For us, also, one of the key things that we wanted to make sure that we had was remote access to those devices. It's really challenging in a larger organization where you've got maybe hundreds of these devices out there for every elevator across 30 different buildings on a campus to go and actually touch these devices if you need to check on them, if something's gone on, if you've got an alarm of some sort. So we offer what we call remote device management. It's a platform where you access those devices. You can configure all of the different components. You can configure the different ports. You can configure the LTE, IP addressing, all the things that are kind of important from a network and functionality perspective. You can do it all from that platform, and you don't have to actually physically go touch the device, which is it's a time saver for staff, of course, but it also that one pane of glass, you know everything that's going on with all the devices. You can get alerts either via email or SMS or what have you, that let you know that something's gone on. You know, it's gone on LTE or it's gone on battery power or it's come back on to AC power from battery power. And then from a technology perspective, you know, we're the one vendor for this, right? We don't have a stack of devices that we're putting together to build the solution. It's all self-contained in one box, and that gives you a lot of flexibility as to what you do with the platform, the operating system on the device, and so forth, and the functionality. So one of the things that we have in AirDial, which is unique to us, it's a patented technology. It's called multi-path technology, where essentially it allows us to replicate the voice over both a wired and wireless connection at the same time. So it's kind of a best packet wins, if you will, right? So it makes sure that the call never fails, but we don't require anything like a SIP registration, for example. So for those who are watching, you'll know that that's a little bit of a process. We don't require it because we're essentially duplicating it across both links. That assures that those calls happen and they stay up and connected, even if we have to switch from one transport wired to wireless, for example.
So, are there use cases? You've been talking about. I keep on thinking of the elevators, and that's
Mhm.
got to be, all these problems of access, and but it has to always work. And when are you going to use it? You're going to use it during a power failure or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the requirements that are around these type of solutions where you have to have a battery backup in it, right? So our battery, it's usually replaceable, by the way. So it's not something where you have to go and rip and replace the box when the battery dies. It's a lithium ion battery, so at some point the battery will need to be replaced. But that gives you 8 to 12 hours on battery backup. So those calls can happen if you had a power outage, you can still make a phone call on that elevator phone. You know, another one that we see come up more and more often as well is gate entry systems or door entry systems. So you think about a building or an apartment complex or something like that. If the power fails and you can't use the touchpad to get in, you're stuck, right? Unless you have a key. So this is another area that we're seeing a lot of use cases for. Fire alarms will always be a primary use case, and it's one of the heaviest, um, still driven by POTS platforms that are out there. And there are dozens of different fire alarm panels out there that we've done a lot of testing. We haven't found one that we can't work with yet. So done a lot of fingerprinting behind the scenes to make sure that we make those work as well. So, but elevators and door entry seem to be the top go getters right now. But all of these things, anything that has a copper line, air dial will work for. Think about a high volume fax machine, for example. Doug, you know as well as I do, fax machines have been around for it seems like 1,000 years, right? They've been around since the 70s. They're not going away. We keep talking about it, but they're never really going to go away. You can think about hospitals, for example, or doctors' offices or auto dealerships, where they are really heavily dependent on faxing to and fro. And oftentimes these are large, high volume fax, several hundred pages. AirDial is a great solution for that, right? It gets rid of the copper line that you basically have dedicated for one and only purpose. You cut it down to a much lower cost solution that's just as reliable, and can meet the needs for those particular markets and use cases.
I'm glad you talked about this idea of a POTS line dependency. And what I was sort of thinking about also is a big country. There's companies and organizations that are rich, big stadiums and big organizations, and there's
Mhm.
lots of money, all sorts of money. But there's so many types of organizations, 501(c)(3)s, NGOs, even government, small rural areas, and so on, that, there's not a lot of money.
Right.
Is this even affordable? Is this migration affordable? And I'm also thinking about our channel partner community when they look out at the hundreds and hundreds of small businesses and organizations they serve. Can they have, can they actually reasonably offer this to people?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to look at this. Oftentimes, the cost of the POTS line is somewhat buried to different parts of the organization, right? Because it's just a bill. Somebody in accounting or finance pays the bill, and they're just paying the bill. They're not necessarily focused on what does that line do, what's its purpose in life, kind of thing. That's changing because of the fact that these bills keep going up. So organizations are like, oh, well, wait a minute, why is the phone bill, instead of the $200 a month we've been paying forever, why is it now 1,000 or 12 or $1,300? So it causes folks to stop and pause and say, okay, we need to look into this. Um, the solutions that we're replacing them with are a fraction of that cost per month. From that perspective, the cost of savings is almost immediate. What I recommend and what Ooma recommends to anybody is that any organization, big, small, rural, urban, doesn't matter, do an audit of the lines that you have or that you think you have. So I'll give you a good example. We have a customer that was an apartment building, and it was an older apartment building in an old East Coast city, Boston. And they went through and did an audit. And what I mean by an audit, Doug, is that you take your phone bill and you look at each line and go, okay, this line belongs to this number, this device. This belongs to this device, and so forth. What they found is that they had, I think it was somewhere around 10 to 12 lines that they were paying for that were connected to nothing. They weren't even in use, and they hadn't been in use for a long time. But through remodels and so on and so forth, the lines had just kind of gotten lost, but they kept paying for it. So we always recommend that customers go and do an audit. And it's just as simple as taking your phone bill and going literally line by line and figuring out, yes, we're using this line. No, we're not using that line. And even if you decided as an organization you wanted to stay on the copper lines for a little bit longer, I don't recommend it because they are going away. But if you wanted to, you would even see cost savings just from doing the audit itself.
So, as we wrap up our podcast today, what's the big message? It sounds like there's a way to get started and a path forward.
Yeah, there is. So you can contact us directly. You can go to our website, uma.com/airdial, and that'll give you information on the AirDial. You can then reach out. One of our sales folks in our sales organization will reach out and help you go through the kind of the audit process and kind of the next steps and so forth. We also have a long and illustrious list of channel partners who are reselling Ooma AirDial as well and offering services around it too. So if you already have a relationship with a partner, you can ask them about AirDial and they can help you as well. The big thing before you call us or anything is have that phone bill. That is always a help because we can start getting an idea of what that immediate cost savings will be that I was referring to a little bit earlier. But it'll also help kind of kick off the audit process and help us size the project, quite frankly. How many do you need, kind of thing, and get us a good baseline of where we need to go. As you look at any POTS replacement solution. The key thing is get that list of regulatory compliance. That's a big thing. It needs to have the NFPA certifications in the ASME and UL A64. Those are really pillar points for these types of devices. And for us, Ooma, obviously we have our multi-path technology, which sets us apart from any other solution that's in the market right now.
Well, Clint, I want to thank you for joining me today. This has been really enlightening. I'm hoping to do more of these and we'll break it down into small bits, but I think this is a good place to start. Thanks for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks, Doug. Appreciate the time.